Crystal had always been different. As a child, she sensed things. She always felt like she was out of control, feeling guilty for crying for no reason or getting angry for no reason, frequently catching glimpses of things out of the corner of her eyes that were never there. But it wasn't until Charlie went missing that all her idiosyncrasies became abilities that changed how she existed in the world. Charlie was an active kid, the kind who played basketball at the park and helped his elderly neighbors with their groceries and mowed their lawns. He was very close with his family. They did everything together and they really enjoyed one another. When he vanished, collectively the town seemed to hold its breath while his family fell into darkness. However, Crystal felt pulled, incessant whispers that tugged at her until they were too much to ignore, but they were too muddy to understand. And as she lay in bed, feeling connected to the earth below her and the energy above her, breathing in, breathing out, welcoming a quiet mind, the room chilled and the air thickened. And out of the corner of her eye, she thought she saw movement. She wiped her eyes, blinked a few times, and turned her head toward the vaporous figure that she was sure, like many times before, wouldn't be there. Yet, there he was, Charlie. His eyes bore into hers, and desperation and panic filled her body. And she didn't actually hear him, but the thoughts, "Help me, I'm trapped," kept playing over and over in her mind like a skipped record. And then Crystal gasped. She wasn't exactly sure what to do, but Charlie's presence was undeniable. Her hair stood on its ends. She could feel pins and needles all over her. Finally, she mustered the courage. "Charlie, where are you if you're trapped?" He showed her images of a metal box, and she was confused. He stared down, pulling Crystal's gaze to his feet, and she noticed there was a toe tag. He was in a morgue. And just like that, she understood. His spirit refused to leave his body until his family claimed him. And that seemed like Charlie. Crystal's nervousness shifted to a sense of responsibility, and she had to help him. She just wasn't exactly sure how. And as the days went on, the whispers persisted, and desperation drove Crystal to the family, and she knocked on their door, trembling. Mrs. Lawson answered, her eyes red from the endless flow of hopelessness that she was feeling. Crystal explained, voice cracking, how Charlie had reached out to her, and how crazy that must seem. And Mrs. Lawson shook her head and said that the morgue had checked, and they had no unidentified bodies that matched Charlie's description. But Crystal insisted. "He is there. can feel it. I can hear it. I can see it." The family exchanged glances. They had heard rumors. The psychic who claimed to talk to the dead. Skepticism warned with grief. "We've done everything," Mrs. Lawson said. "We can't bear false hope." And they said that they checked. Crystal understood. She had been alone for most of her life, and so this was not going to be any different. She was just thankful that they had been kind to her, considering what she was claiming. And as she left, the whispers intensified. Charlie's voice echoed in her dreams, urging her to find him. She couldn't ignore it. The urgency was intense. So she concocted a desperate plan. If she was right, then it would be worth it. And if she was wrong, well, she would have to deal with those consequences. Pretending to be a courier, Crystal arrived at the county morgue. She never lied about anything in her life, so this was intimidating to her. The gray, sterile corridors smelled of disinfectant and decay, and she kept her head down. Her heart raced, her cheeks flushed. She was hoping no one would ask her any questions. And she reached a small office, and the morgue attendant handed her a clipboard. "Sign here," oblivious to her true intent. Crystal's hand shook as she took the clipboard, and he motioned for her to go further down the hall. She followed the signs to the specimen lab, but veered off at the last minute into a large room littered with stainless steel doors on each wall. She glanced to her left, then scanned to the right, wondering which one was his. And she kept coming back to number 435. There was no reason other than that's where her gaze kept ending. "Where are you, Charlie? Tell me. Show me something." It was quiet. It was the most peaceful it had been since that night when he made himself known to her. And as she started to walk to 435, there was a ringing in her ears that became louder and louder with each step. She knew without a doubt that he would be there. She placed her hand on the door and the ringing stopped. Slowly opening the door, there was a tag. Doe, 687-435. She slid the table out, and the unmistakable face of young Charlie stared back at her, cold, lifeless. His face bore the bruises of struggle, the marks of a violent end. Tears blurred her vision. "I found you," she whispered. "I will make this right." But the whispers started again, and Charlie's spirit lingered long enough to urge her to uncover the truth. She opened herself up without fear. Feeling like she was falling backwards, fragments began to appear. An abandoned cabin, a hidden cellar, blood-soaked earth, and Charlie's torn clothes. She knew where to send the police. And she took out her phone and called Mrs. Lawson. She must have been in shock because she immediately stopped crying and shifted her voice into go mode and said she'd be there in 10 minutes. Crystal promised to not leave Charlie's side as they hung up the phone. Unbelievably, Crystal was able to stay by Charlie's side without being interrupted by anyone until Mr. and Mrs. Lawson arrived, being escorted by the chief medical examiner. The family wept with such complexity of emotions that it was hard for Crystal to control her own. And the medical examiner didn't say much, and rightly so. They talked about holding a proper funeral, but Crystal reminded them that Charlie's body probably needed to be properly examined for evidence of foul play. And she saw the looks on their faces and felt the worry in their hearts. But she assured them that now that they had Charlie's body, he was no longer choosing to stay with it, and that it was okay to leave it. That he is with them always, and all they need to do to feel his love is remember his laugh, and he will wrap them in the warmest hug. Later that night, completely drained, Crystal laid on the sofa. She felt like she weighed 1,000 pounds. Just keeping her eyes open took tremendous efforts. Just keeping her eyes open took tremendous effort. Her mind was slow, but her heart felt light. Waking up on the sofa almost 5 hours later, Crystal almost didn't know where she was. She collected herself, got ready for bed, enjoyed a glass of cold water, and turned off the lights. It felt all too familiar. She was connected to the earth below her and open to the energy above her. Breathing in, breathing out, as the whispers persisted. Other lost souls now sought her. The murdered girl, the soldier lost in battle. And Crystal became a bridge between worlds, a beacon of light in the darkness, and she wondered if her gift was a curse, if she'd ever find peace again. And then in that moment, she heard Charlie's voice. "Thank you. You set us free." And Crystal would have to learn many things to negotiate this new world, but she was willing to go beyond the veil if it meant helping the dead and the living. Good night. Sleep tight under starry skies till morning light.